This week's episode of Blowing Smoke with Twisted Rico is brought to you by Baby Loves Tacos and its 2 locations in Pittsburgh, PA. The original hot spot right smack in the middle of Little Italy on Liberty Avenue in Bloomfield, and their newer second location in Millville, right over the 40th Street Bridge. Zach, Kat, Kaz, John, Ben, and all those groovy cats serve up the best Mexican-style food this side of the Texas border. Huge burritos, tasty bowls, and the finest tacos around. Baby Loves Tacos will fill you up and make you smile. So when in Pittsburgh, head over to Baby Loves Tacos. Tell them Twisted Rico sent you. Baby Loves Tacos, where everybody eats. Before we bring our very special guest, Nate Zucker, onto the show, here's a song from Nate's latest album entitled Colton. This one is called Marigold.
And it's gonna be me this time. It's really gonna be me this time. I finally stopped caring what you think. Going 2020 in a sky full of pink in June. I saw it through. I found myself on a Sunday afternoon. Take 2, yeah. And it's gonna be me this time. It's really gonna be me this time around. I wanna make music in the basement, 'cause I've been running from the street for too long. Yeah, I wanna hang out with my best friends, and I keep writing these songs. It's okay, but tell me why. The sticks and stones are what make me feel alive all night, yeah. I need some time for myself, I think I'm overwhelmed. Back to the basement, gave it all for corn, and he didn't even notice. Only sent my demos to the people who were closest. 6 months down, and it's really just a bonus. Helps to keep me focused, did it all for Colton. But the worst part is that it's coming to an end, like the Barrington trip. So the August weekends, but changes a marigold blooming in the summer. Don't get too attached, though I still can find comfort. And it's gonna be me this time. It's really gonna be me this time. I finally stopped caring what you think. Going 2020 in the sky full of pink and June. I saw it through. I found myself on a Sunday afternoon. Take 2, yeah. And it's gonna be me this time. It's really gonna be me this time around. But nothing gold can stay. I took the long way out, and when you went away, I wasn't quite myself. I knew it wouldn't last, but I could hope to God it. Disregard for the past, and I still play the odds. What's that say about you? Yeah, it's a compliment. Why not take it in stride? Think about what I meant. I couldn't tell you what's next. Why don't we make amends? 'Cause this is not the end, it's something we commend. And it's gonna be me this time. It's really gonna be me this time. I finally stopped caring what you think. Going 2020 in a sky full of pink and June. I saw it through. I found myself on a Sunday afternoon. Take 2, yeah. And it's gonna be me this time. It's really gonna be me this time around. And a sky full of pink and June. And a sky full of pink and June. Cold 2020 in a sky full of pink and June. I saw it through. I saw it through. I saw it through. Cold 2020 in a sky full of pink and June. And it's gonna be me this time. It's really gonna be me this time. I finally stopped caring what you think. Cold 2020 in a sky full of pink and June. I saw it through. I found myself on a Sunday afternoon. Take 2, yeah. And it's gonna be me this time. It's really gonna be me this time around. And it's 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 gonna be me this time around.
Welcome to Blowing Smoke with Twisted Rico. I'm your host, Steve Ricardo. You just heard Marigold from the second album by 16-year-old Nate Zucker. That's right, you heard me right, 16 years old. Welcome to the show, Nate.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Super excited to be here.
Yeah, we're very happy to have you. Nate was introduced to me by Ellie V, the singer of The Charms, who also they do the theme song for the show that you hear every week, So Pretty. And she was raving about Nate, and I went and checked them out, and I love the stuff that I heard on Bandcamp and Spotify, and you can find his stuff everywhere. We'll tell you about that later. Nate, you told me that you heard a song when you were around 9 years old, and then you became interested in electronic music. Can you share that story with us, how that all went down?
Yeah, definitely. So when I was 9, I was in 3rd grade, I think. Yeah, I was in 3rd grade, and I was just kind of like vaguely into like watching YouTube videos at the time. And I remember I watched this one video with this song in the background. It was like an electronic dance song called Goodbye Winter Chords by Rogue, who's like a EDM artist.
Yeah.
And I remember I went to his SoundCloud to check out his other music because I just really, really liked the song in the background. And before this time, I didn't even have really an interest in music at all. I just was kind of like into like other things. But I found his SoundCloud and I started looking at his other songs, and that kind of eventually led me to find like other artists. And around that same time, a friend of mine showed me, I think, GarageBand, and those kind of like two interests of mine with this artist and like GarageBand kind of like merged together. I started making these songs, and obviously they were very bad because I knew absolutely nothing about music, but it got me really interested at a young age, and I'm very grateful that I found that song and that artist because it really sparked this whole thing that I do now, I guess.
Wow, so you started actually using GarageBand when you were 9?
Yeah, I think a friend of mine just showed it to me, and what's funny is it wasn't even like I was really writing my own stuff. They have these things called loops, which are like kind of pre-made like components of songs, and I probably spent over a year, like all I was doing was just piecing those together because it wasn't like I'd played an instrument. I didn't know anything about music or music theory or anything. Like I taught myself piano and like music theory at like a basic level, but yeah, I was just figuring out like how music sounded basically and like what sounded good.
Do you play instruments now on a regular basis?
I basically taught myself kind of like basic piano. I can like figure my way out around the piano, and I do a lot of stuff kind of like collaborating with other artists who play, you know, guitar, drums, who can help me kind of get the sound that I am hearing in my head out into the song and like actually finish it. But I do use a lot of like synths and stuff. On a keyboard, you can use these sounds that basically sound like strings or sound like an electric keyboard. So it's very versatile to be able to play piano and connect that to a computer and to make all these different sounds.
Wow, I'm pretty impressed that you started doing that at such a young age and figured all that out. You just released your second album, which is, these are both available both digitally only, correct?
Yes, right now, yeah.
So, Colton is your new record that came out in December, and before that, Come Through. They're both on Spotify and Bandcamp. What was the recording process for you, and when you started, say, on Come Through? Tell us about your process that you went through to record that record.
Yeah, so it was actually very different from most of my music. So, yeah, as I said, I've been making music since I was 9, and I released probably, I'd say, close to 100 songs that were instrumental, a lot more electronic than the stuff you've been hearing on my Spotify and Bandcamp and whatever. And just generally a lot like more, I'd say, chill, melodic stuff. And this was really like my first time releasing, one, like an album or like an extended body of work, and two, collaborating with other people and doing vocals. So I taught myself how to sing very quickly because I heard some songs that had vocals in them that I really wanted to kind of capture the sound of, and that basically propelled me to collaborate with vocalists like Adi and Catherine and Alex Bloom and Elijah on Come Through, and also collaborate with instrumentalists like Will and Dan on Colton. But basically,
I'm sorry. Like I know you told me you go to Needham High School. Are these other kids that are in the area that you collaborated with?
Yeah, so some of them go to my school. Like Adi, she graduated now, but I met her in a film scoring class that I took last year, and like almost I think it must have been like a month before quarantine started. We just started talking, and I asked her if she wanted to like work on a song with me, and it turned out really well, and that was putting me through. And people like Catherine and Elijah are from New York City, and I've actually, both of those people I've never met, but what happened is a friend of mine, Malcolm Zeller, he also has a Spotify. He makes kind of like house music. It's very, very good. But he introduced me to these people. Basically, I sent him a song of mine, and he recorded their verses on top of this song, like for me. So I basically sent them the beat, the instrumental. They sent me back vocals, and then I mixed it all together, and it was a really cool process. And
fantastic.
That album, Come Through, took place entirely over quarantine. So all those collaborations, I think, with the exception of a D, which was right before quarantine, were all virtual, and all of them just like through me reaching out to people. And it was a pretty cool process, pretty unique.
Yeah, you mentioned to me that you recorded both of these records during the pandemic. Did you direct all your energy towards music during the lockdown? Like, were you out of school for a little while? I know besides the summer. I mean, were you out of school in March and then you just started doing this? Or did it happen in the summer?
So I wrote my first song on Come Through in December 2019. And I released that on SoundCloud, followed by Putting Me Through, which came out on SoundCloud in like February, in Riverside in like January of last year. But basically, I still had a bunch of tracks I wanted to do, and I got let out of school because of COVID on, I think, March 13th or 14th.
Yeah, it sounds about right.
And I had 2 weeks just of no school, and I basically, during those 2 weeks, I remember like the first night I got out, I just put all my energy into like finishing the track Come Through, and I was just very, very focused on music for that time period. And even going after that, like I had a lot of free time, and I basically put it all into this album, and I was super happy with how it turned out at the time.
Yeah, there's a definite upgrade when you go from Come Through to the record that you put out in December, Colton. Like, for example, the song Marigold that we just listened to, just absolutely really, really good. I mean, did you feel that growth happening while you were recording?
Yeah, definitely. I think the difference for the most part was, there was kind of two main differences. One was the just like the amount of experience I had with like writing music that had like vocals in it, and that was kind of like almost like a pop sort of like format.
Right.
But the other one was kind of the amount of time I spent in like my process on writing the songs. On songs like Riverside and Come Through, I would write the vocals and produce and do the entire thing just kind of like at once in my room by myself, and it was just kind of like all done like together and like as one big process. But with Colton, actually, for the most part, I started writing Colton in early May. And I just kind of sat at my keyboard in my room and came up with these songs. And there was just no production. So I basically spent 3 months writing and no producing. And then I spent like the next 3 months producing. And that kind of process really made sure that the songwriting was really strong before I got to the production part. And I think that's what really brought the whole thing together. Yeah,
if you don't mind me saying, you don't sound like a 16-year-old to me. You sound like you're like a veteran at this. It's amazing how much you've accomplished in such a short period of time. Did you do anything else while you were over, or was it just music 24/7?
No, I mean, I had school during this time, of course. And like, I don't know, I saw like friends socially distance and everything. But there just kind of wasn't like a ton to do, especially because everything was closed down, and Needham isn't like a super huge town, obviously. So I spent a lot of my time like playing music with other people, making it myself, and just kind of like having fun with it, really. That's how I'd put it. That's
cool. I have something interesting I'm going to do with you right now. So I decided to reach out to another 16-year-old to help me with this interview. And I have some questions for you from one of our listeners, Nina, who's also 16. Yes, she is. And she's a fan of your music. And she lives out in Colorado. So I'm gonna ask you the questions that she sent me. Are you ready to take this on, Nate? I mean, you think you can handle
it?
Okay.
Let's go.
Okay, these are a little different than the questions I asked you. The first one was, What is the hardest thing you've gone through which music has helped you through?
I think my immediate answer would probably be quarantine. And the reason I say that is because it wasn't so hard for me, like mentally, because I had these projects that were kind of ongoing throughout the entire thing that kept me like on track and motivated. But I think if I didn't have anything during that time, it would be a lot harder and just generally like a lot less enjoyable. Or, I mean, as like enjoyable as it can be, it's quarantine. But yeah, probably COVID.
Yeah, this isn't her question. This is mine. I wanted to ask you this because I was wondering, how do your parents feel about what you're doing right now? I mean, are they like telling you, well, don't forget you're in school. I know you want to be a rock star, but you're still in school. Or are they like totally on board with the plan?
Yeah, that's an interesting question for sure. We actually just started like looking at like college stuff, and getting ready for like the future. Like a month or so ago, and it's definitely like an ongoing process. But how I kind of look at it and how my parents look at it, I assume, is that like if it works out great. But like I'm not really planning on it. I'd say I'm more just kind of like hoping for it, and I'm doing my best to put myself in a position where I do succeed. But if I don't, that's okay. This is kind of just like a backup right now.
Really? So your music's a backup plan?
Or no, it's the opposite way around.
Okay, good.
I don't know how to feel. I don't know how to phrase that. It's like if it kicks off, great, but I'm not expecting it to, essentially.
Right. So you don't really have. I mean, you mentioned you're a junior in high school to me, and I know that. So you don't really have colleges already picked out that you want to go to, but you have music that you want to record, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's like I have more concrete music plans than I do college plans right now, which is kind of funny. But,
and are your parents cool with that?
They're definitely, like I think we're on like a very similar page. I'm
good
hoping to go to college. They're hoping for me to go to college. Everything seems to be on sound,
Is there anyone else in your family that has anything to do with music that would understand what you're trying to accomplish?
No one in my family is a musician. A few of my siblings kind of do very like creative things, I'd say. My parents are both designers, so my family definitely has a lot of experience in like the whole like creative world and like especially like the commercial creative world.
Right.
No one does music.
Okay, you ready for Nina's number 2 question here? Here we
definitely.
go. Was there ever a moment that you remember when you knew music is what you wanted to do? I guess that might go all the way back to the 9-year-old thing, but I'll let you answer it.
Yeah, I guess taking that in like a slightly different direction, just because like I answered the 9-year-olds thing already. Talked about that, but I guess I took a really long hiatus from music in like my freshman to sophomore year, kind of like middle of freshman year to middle of sophomore year of high school. And basically that was kind of the time between like me releasing these tracks on SoundCloud and me releasing the music that's now on like Spotify that you can hear. So I'd say like the Riverside was like basically like the first track I made, one that I sang on, and 2 that I like really, really liked a lot more than like my stuff before. So I'd say like releasing and making Riverside was probably the moment I knew, like once I made that track, I was like really kind of like it like
clicked.
Sparked a new passion. Yeah, I gained a whole new wave of like motivation. And even after releasing Come Through, I remember like I had a lot more motivation to work on music, and I started Colton only like a few days after. I mean, sure, it was just like writing and coming up with ideas, but I was very just motivated since it's been about a year now of me just like pumping out writing these songs like
nonstop. That's cool.
Yeah.
Her next question is, what do you get from writing and performing music?
That's a good question. I have not been able to perform my music yet. I hope to, but it's been a pandemic, and I don't really want to do it virtually because I feel like that kind of detracts from the experience a little bit, especially with like what I'm trying to go for. But
so the only people that have heard your music are the people that you record with?
Live, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, essentially.
Live, yeah, I meant live, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah, but it's all of Colton was basically written acoustically, essentially, and with input from, like, my friend Will Anderson, who is the guitarist on Colton. And it's all able to be performed live, which is really great and really helpful for live performance. But
so you want to do that? You want to go down that road at some point once we get this pandemic out of the way, right?
Yeah, because I mean, ultimately, like the songs are, I'd say, almost meant to be performed live,
right?
At least at some point, because they were written that way. So, yeah, I'm super excited for that opportunity once I can get it.
This question's kind of funny. She asks, "Is music an outlet or a job for you, and why?" I think she knows you're in high school, but you know.
Yeah, it definitely has never really. I mean, I'd say actually almost recently it's felt. Going back to a few questions ago, I was talking about Riverside and how that really sparked a whole new like passion of mine for music. I think at that point it started to feel more like an outlet than a job, and not that it really felt like a job before, but I was a lot more into the kind of like the promotional side and the commercial side of music than like the, you know, songwriting part, I guess. So yeah, more recently it's felt almost entirely like an outlet and not like a job at all, ever. So
cool.
Yeah, it's been going well.
And the last question is, will you be my boyfriend? I'm just kidding. She didn't say that. I just made that up. I made that up so you would laugh and she would laugh. So you're like spending so much time working on your music right now. Where do you expect the future to take you? I mean, are you just going to keep pumping these digital releases out on Spotify? Like, are you already working on your next one? Or, I mean, what's your plan?
That's a very good question. I think my plans are always changing, and I mean that on the basis of a day, like on a day-to-day basis, and on an hour-to-hour basis, in fact. But for instance, I have a few singles that I'm working on right now. They're kind of like almost a mix between Colton, Come Through, and a little bit of like a punk rock influence in some places.
Oh, really? Cool.
Yeah, but I guess, yeah, I'm not sure right now. I'm very happy with how Colton and Come Through turned out, but I think I'd definitely like to branch out into something new, something different, because Come Through and Colton were pretty different, and I kind of want to keep that up and eventually just kind of like find my sound.
Is there like any specific pop music or underground, independent, metal, punk, or any kind of music that you listen to that you feel like might be influencing you a little? Like, do you have any favorite artists, or are they all in the electronic vein?
Yeah, there's quite a wide range of influences on my stuff here. I'll actually, so I have a few playlists on my Spotify of influences. So I have a playlist called Colton Influences, and the bands in there are, for instance, I'll just read off some of the names. So we have like Flint, American Football, who are like kind of like Midwest emo and like math rock bands. I have Knapsack. He's a electronic artist who I take a lot of inspiration from and just kind of like really resonate with that sort of sound. Kevin Abstract is a rapper. Lana Del Rey is a pop artist. Really incredible production by Jack Antonoff. And, you know, artists like Roy Blair and Breakins is kind of like this punk EDM fusion. Really good. Yeah, but kind of all over the place. And I think I take bits and pieces of those in different songs and kind of interweave them.
Those are you're educating me a little here. So did you ever hear of bands like the Beatles and the Stones, or have you just like?
Yeah, of course. I think what's interesting about the way I discover music is that I basically started on my own. My starting place were these tiny little SoundCloud artists who influenced me, I'd say, more than kind of the big artists like the Beatles, who were the people who, you know, made like the classics. So that might have influenced my sound, I think, to like start and really be influenced mostly by these smaller artists who are kind of like have have their own little unique sound.
Right. Yeah, I noticed that from the answers you gave me. Lana Del Rey is well known, but the rest, to me, they might be bigger than I realize they are. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised because I have kind of like I'm old school in a lot of ways. Were you influenced at all by like the '90s bands like Nirvana and Weezer and Pearl Jam and bands like that?
Yeah. American Football is from like the late 90s, I think, and Slint is also from the 90s, and those are kind of like the just like math rock and like kind of like the Midwest emo bands that kind of they've also made a comeback in recent years just because like their sounds kind of have like really like kind of stayed relevant in like the subgenres that I kind of fall in. So I guess it's really just about like what stayed relevant and what's kind of like useful for like my influences and like what I kind of go back to.
Now, Ellie V was telling me that she spoke to you about working together and redoing an entire Joni Mitchell album. Did you know who Joni Mitchell was when she asked you to do that, or did you have to go and listen to the album? It's the Blue album.
Yeah, I had heard of her, but I didn't know her music super well. I listened to the album, and it definitely sounded really good. But yeah, I guess like I'm always finding new influences and finding inspiration in artists that I haven't heard of before. So I'm excited when people ask me to.
Did you ever?
Stuff like that.
Have you ever heard like Ellie V's band, The Charms?
Yeah, I've listened to The Charms, definitely.
Cool. Yeah, that's really interesting that she brought you. I told her last night when I spoke to her that she was the booking agent for this show because she booked you basically on Blowing Smoke with Twisted
funny.
Rico. Why don't you tell our listeners places where they can go, some links where they can go and find your music before we let you go?
Yeah, if you just search my name, Nate Zucker, on Spotify, Apple Music, SoundCloud, really whatever. My music is wherever you are comfortable listening to music, even on YouTube, completely free, or on SoundCloud, which is free too. But yeah, basically just Nate Zucker anywhere.
And if they want to contribute, they can go on Bandcamp because that's where I listened to your music was on Bandcamp. So
yeah,
cool.
Or buy it on iTunes or whatever, you know.
Cool. Well, listen, man, thank you very much for coming on the show. Nate Zucker, ladies and gentlemen, 16 years old and ready to take on the world, man. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
All right. We'll talk soon. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. That was different. I thought it would be a fun thing to reach out to my friend Heather's about having her daughter ask some questions, and it turns out that Nina became a fan of Nate's music. That's how it works, and that was really interesting. I'm fascinated. I love to hear that there's young people out there that are starting really young and into it the way Nate is into it. I mean, made 2 records in 1 year. He's 16, you know? I mean, to me, that's fantastic. And it couldn't make me more happy. I'm going to switch gears here and hit a topic that's kind of a sad one to bring up, but I have to. I had the great fortune to meet, get to know, work with, and hang out with Sylvain Sylvain, who passed away this past week. Let me tell you a couple stories. Back around 2003, when I was living here, before I moved a lot, but I had been back in Somerville, I got a phone call from a booking agent asking me if I could help Sylvain get a gig. And he just so happened to need a gig on a Tuesday night. Well, coincidentally, at the time, I was actually helping Andrea Gillis over at the Abbey Lounge in Inman Square, which is right on the Somerville-Cambridge line, and I was booking Tuesday nights. I was mostly doing acoustic shows and having like 6 performers every Tuesday, you know, bands that just went acoustic and wanted to do something different, and some were acoustic. Well, I talked to Sylvain's people and I actually booked them and a show, and everything pretty much fell into place. I agreed before the show to meet up with Sylvain over at the S&S Deli, which is a pretty famous place in Inman Square, Cambridge, where we had a great talk, along with one of his other longtime friends, Al Carrier, who lives up here. Al used to play in the band Asherah, and him and Sylvain talked, and Sylvain told him he was going to meet me. He said, "Oh, I know Steve," because I actually had booked some shows for Asherah. So we went out to the S&S and we hung out for an hour and ate food. It was a blast. Later that night, he sold every one of the 110 tickets available for the show at the Abbey and put on a fabulous show. And there was even this huge party that night, and all the bands, a lot of people in bands bought all the tickets, basically, that were at the show. And everyone went to this party and hung out. And he was just so cool, man. He hung out till the wee hours of the night and crashed out in Cambridge. And that was my first introduction to him. A few years later, when the New York Dolls reunited, the Charms, who I was managing, happened to also do the intro and outro music on the show. I try and say that as often as I can. We're invited to play the Underground Garage Festival in New York City on Randall's Island in August 2004, and the Dolls and the Stooges headlined that show. So once again, ran into each other backstage. Hey, how you doing? I actually knew the New York Dolls manager, Darren Hill, at the time, so that was pretty cool. And then later, at the end of 2004, the Charms once again opened for the New York Dolls in New York City on New Year's Eve on a show that was partly televised on ESPN. So the whole thing was going great between the two bands. And then a couple of years later, guess what? They did 22 dates opening for the Dolls across the United States. I got to see probably about 6 or 7 of those shows. And every time I saw Sylvain, we spoke. He was a nice, sincere man. We have a lot of mutual friends. He's a true legend of rock and roll, because the New York Dolls, in the early 70s were one of the most influential early bands combining glam and punk. And this week, we lost one of the greats. So I just wanted to talk about Sylvain for a few minutes. Rest in peace, one of the really true rock legends of this generation. Okay, as I always mention, it's really important that we support the mom and pops and independent stores like Baby Loves Tacos, and stores like JLS Design in Leicester, Mass, Moonbeam Cafe, Oakmont, PA, Spectacle Eyewear in Boston, the Dark Horse Pub right here in Somerville, Honest Taqueria, the Record Archive in Rochester, New York, and of course Book Lovers Gourmet, my hometown of Webster. And there's so many others. I need to expand on this list. I mentioned the S&S Deli. They could probably use your support. They're right down the road from here. These fine establishments need us until we get this mess cleared up. It's funny because I'm here recording today on Inauguration Day. We have a new leader now in the country, and like many others, I'm hoping things kind of turn around now. I have a feeling they will. It might take a while, but until then, we have to obey the rules, wear our masks, and, order takeout food, order stuff online. You could go in the stores, just be cool. I saw a video where people were refusing to put their masks on, and it just really doesn't make any sense. It's not going to accomplish anything to have that kind of attitude. We need to get through this pandemic so we can start going out and seeing rock bands perform in clubs again. And I'm yearning for that day when I can walk into a room and see a band live, It's fun seeing bands do their things on the internet, but it's more fun to see it live. All right, before we leave, I want to thank our engineer, Nick Z, here at New Alliance East in Somerville, and also our patrons. We had some new ones in the last few weeks. I really appreciate it. These monthly contributions keep this podcast going. So if you want to support this show, go to patreon.com/ Facebook.com/Twisted Rico. If you have any comments or questions or whatever, you can email me at twistedrico@gmail.com. I also encourage any bands to send me MP3s and links because we recently, earlier today, finished the second Twisted Rico radio show, which is a reality now. We're going to be doing them regularly. Well, I'll be playing about 25 songs on every show, so I'm always looking for more. Believe me, I have a lot of music, but I'm always looking for newer stuff to play. So please, twistedrico@gmail.com if you're a band and you want to send something over. You can follow us on Instagram at Blowing Smoke with TR and also at Twisted Rico. And there's also a Blowing Smoke with Twisted Rico Facebook page. And many of these shows end up on YouTube. And some are audio only, but my friend Herb actually puts them up. And he adds photos and things to it, talking about the great Herb Morsiglio, who engineered many of my shows, has been helping me with the YouTube still. And I want to tell you right now, we have another great show planned for you next week, okay? We have a Boston legend coming on. Musician, artist, Boston's own Dave Tree will be right here in the studio. That's right. He's coming in the studio to talk about his music and his art. He's been great at both of those things. He's in charge of the New Alliance Art Gallery right out in the hallway here, and he's been doing a great job with that. Once the pandemic's over, we'll be having parties here, live music, the whole 9 yards. So tune in next week for Dave Tree. This is Blowing Smoke with Twisted Rico. I'm your host, Steve Ricardo. Till the next time we say goodbye, keep the rock and roll alive. We love you, Busy Phillips.